Hey guys, and welcome to or back to the Paws in Pursuit podcast with your host, Summer Clark. So today we have a super exciting conversation coming up with Chris Kerton, also known often in the agility community as Kurt, of Karma Fitness. So Kurt is the Team GB fitness coach for agility, and he also has his own company, Karma Fitness, which is a personal training company, and he trains people in agility, out of agility. And yeah, I'm super excited to talk to him, as fitness is one of my biggest passions alongside agility and nutrition as well. So without further ado, let's get the conversation going. All right, well, first of all, do you want to introduce yourself if people don't know who you are, what you do? I mean, most people will, but just in case.
So my name's Chris Kerton. Most people call me Kurt. It's a bit of an on-running joke with the people in my academy, but it's only my mum who really calls me Chris anymore.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm handler fitness coach for Team GB. I've been running Karma Fitness for probably like 7 years, maybe.
Oh.
But I've been doing PT work for 20 odd years.
Oh, wow. That. Okay. A long time then.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was actually the first question. How long have you been a personal trainer for? So about 20 years then.
Yeah, well, I qualified as a personal trainer after I finished doing triathlons. It was one of those things that I think people just assumed that I could be a personal trainer because I was doing triathlons.
Yeah.
At the time, I wasn't, but I thought, you know what, I quite enjoy training in general, so it would be a good thing to get into. And it's from then I got my qualifications. And I always did personal training, but it wasn't always my main job.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. What was your job before you personal trained then?
My main job, I was an engineer. I was an electrical engineer.
Oh, okay. Is the personal training full time now? Is that all you do now?
Yeah. So it was when I qualified as a personal trainer, I was doing personal training as my only job.
Oh, okay.
I was doing that, and I was a lifeguard.
Oh,
and
okay.
I know.
Was that in a gym?
I was like a coach of athletics as well.
Oh, okay.
And then I just decided, I won't get into the details of it, but I just decided at the time that I wanted to kind of have a trade behind me.
Yeah.
So I decided to kind of go into electrical maintenance work, and it just ended up becoming an engineering kind of job. When you have a family, you kind of need that reassurance, and that's kind of where I went. That's why I went with it.
Yeah,
but it was always something that I still did. I always did PT work. But then, about 7 or 8 years ago, I wanted to do what I loved rather than what I felt I had to do, and that's when I started Karma Fitness up.
So you've not always wanted to do it, but you kind of thought, oh, I enjoy this, why not make it a business sort of thing?
Well, I had always wanted to do it, but it wasn't really always possible. I think it's probably the best way. Yeah. There's a few things happened that made it possible, and I thought, if I'd never do it now, I maybe would always regret it. So,
yes.
Yeah.
So the next one is, how long have you done agility for, and how did you get into that? So completely separate to the fitness, just agility as a sport in general.
So my wife is Amy Kerton, and she competes, and she's been competing longer than me. And it used to be a case of she would go on the weekends, and I used to call it run with the dogs.
Oh, okay.
Because I didn't really have a clue what she was doing. Obviously, I loved our dogs, and it's not like I just didn't know, and it wasn't really of interest to me at the time. It was just something that she did, and I went and did my own stuff. I played rugby, I used to surf, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And really, I started doing agility when Amy fell pregnant with our son.
Oh,
and it was just a case of exactly.
Oh, okay.
It was just a case of she couldn't run our dogs, so she said, "Could I run them to keep them fit, basically?"
Yeah.
And I just thought, that'd be easy.
Yeah.
Oh
no.
And there's quite a funny video of my first ever go of agility that's on Facebook, that some people take delight in seeing how bad I was.
I'll have to search that up.
Yeah, no, it comes up every year on the memories. Don't worry, Amy will always post it. But actually, that was what got me hooked, really, was the fact that I was so bad at it.
Wanted to get better.
I've always loved our dogs.
Yeah.
So that was never the issue. But yeah, because I was really quite terrible, I thought, oh, do you know what? This will actually be quite fun to learn something new. And yeah, and then I fell in love with it the same as I think everyone does, to be honest. But
it's pretty addictive.
Yeah, that's how I got into it as well. Yeah.
Did you then get your own dogs, to train up yourself from puppies and stuff like that?
Well, so the first dog I had was called Figaro, and Amy basically trained him, and he was my first. So I was quite fortunate. It depends how you look at it. I was quite fortunate or quite unfortunate that he was my first dog. So Amy did some things really well with him, but it was Amy's first dog as well, so there were some things that weren't quite so good. So he was tough to learn with, but he was a good dog. I always think to myself, I wish I could go back now and have him as my first dog, because there was lots of good bits, but equally, first dog, some things are not as you would have them now, and that was certainly the case with Figaro.
Yeah, you don't know any better, do you, at the time?
Exactly, we didn't know any better. So I mean, again, it was like learning with a dog that had all the drive naturally, but none of the control, essentially.
Oh, okay. Yeah, makes sense. My first dog was the opposite of that. No drive, knew exactly what he was doing, just didn't really want to do it.
Yeah, well, I've had, like, my first dog that I've had from a pup to train up is Cop. And he's the dog who I'm currently competing with. And he's the opposite. He really wanted to get things right.
Yeah.
But it's been a battle to convince him that it's okay if it goes wrong. And he's getting it now. Like, he's a great dog. I love him. He's, I wouldn't change anything about him, but, like, he's the complete opposite to Figaro.
Yeah, they overthink things, don't they?
Yes, he's a perfectionist. He wants to get it right every time, and he doesn't like it when it doesn't go right.
Him.
So we spent the first couple of years of his agility life convincing him that it's fine if it does go wrong. So he's getting there now, and he's doing good.
Bless him. So what made you want to combine the two, so fitness and agility, to create Karma Fitness? Like, where did that idea come from? What sparked that idea? Oh, I can do both of these,
It's a really random scenario, I suppose, the best way to put it. I mean, when I came into agility, I didn't think of myself as, very fast or anything like that, because I competed at a good level in other sports.
Yeah.
So I know where I stand in the grand scheme of things. Okay, so sprinting, not particularly fast, but maybe athletically quite capable compared to a lot of people who were in agility at the time. And it just happened that I love talking about fitness to anyone. I could go in and talk about, like, the geeky stuff for hours with someone who's also interested in those types of things. So whenever people did approach me and start asking me about the fitness, I'd happily talk to them about it. But then people started asking my advice. And obviously, again, talking about fitness, I'm happy to do that. So I would just, people would call me up who met me on, like, a training day, and they'd be asking and I'd be chatting. And, like, after a few weeks, I'd be spending hours on the phone in the evening speaking to people, just helping them out, giving them advice. And Amy said, why don't you start a business specifically again for agility?
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know. I don't know if there'd be any call for it. But there seemed to be, because people were asking questions.
I was going to say, you kind of already had those clients. You already kind of had the clients there before you even started, I suppose.
Yeah, it certainly wasn't a plan. I mean, if you'd have told me at that point that this is where it would end up, I wouldn't have believed you. And it was just so happened as well at the time, I was on a training day, and I wasn't even in the training day. I was watching Amy.
Oh, okay.
And I was speaking to someone who I had no clue who they were, because I was brand new to agility. And he seemed quite interested, and he was chatting, asking me about my background, all that kind of stuff. And it was Mark Laker, the GB coach.
Oh, yeah.
But I had no idea. I was just chatting to someone to whom he seemed interested.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
And it went from there. That's kind of
Oh, I see. Yeah. And then did he then go, oh, do you want to be the Team GB coach?
Well, so again, at the time, I thought nothing of it.
Yeah.
I knew him as Mark. I didn't know that he was a GB coach. Amy said afterwards, "Oh, do you know who that was?" And I was like, "Yeah, that's Mark. He's Karen's husband." I was like, that was all it was to me,
Not wrong, yeah.
So I think it was more of a connect, like a contact. Then someone who I knew. Didn't really think anything of it because he didn't mention that he was the GB coach at that time.
Okay, yeah.
So I just thought of him as someone else's husband, like I was, if that makes sense. I didn't even know that he did agility himself.
Oh, wow, okay.
And yeah, it was kind of, I don't know how long after that. It was a little bit after that, and I spoke to him, and he said that the current GB handler fitness coach at that time, she wasn't able to go to the EOs. And would I be interested to go and help the team? And I was like, why not?
Okay, cool.
Yeah, and that was just like a stand-in thing. I was just helping out. And then from then, Ruth was the handler fitness coach at the time. And she decided that she wanted to step down. So he asked if I wanted to go in the interview process to see if I could have the job, I guess full-time, I guess you'd call it.
Oh, wow, okay. All kind of worked out nicely then over a length of time.
Yeah, really random.
Yeah, that's quite random.
But yeah, it's one of those things, I suppose, that had all of the stars not aligned, maybe it wouldn't have happened.
But, the best things happen like that, don't they? Randomly, when you don't expect them.
Yeah, unplanned, and one of the, a big turning point for me, I suppose, if you look back at it like that. I mean, I never have looked at it like that, to be honest, but yeah, big turning point.
Definitely. So what does being fitness coach for Team GB involve then? Which is quite a broad question, but, what kind of things do you do with the team? How often do you work with them? Do you work with them individually? Stuff like that.
I would say that since I've come into the role myself on my own, I've tried to kind of make it so that I am approachable to anyone in the team and anyone in the process, honestly. I would say that my role in the GB team is to be of assistance to anyone who feels they need assistance with their handler fitness. I certainly don't push my work onto them because ultimately the person needs to want to do it.
Yeah.
It's like anything, right? If you force someone to do it, they're not really going to be full in, and you kind of need to be if you want to follow a program, right?
Yeah, definitely.
With regards to at the events, then obviously I help the management just with general organisation. I'm just part of the management team, but then I'll be on hand to give warm ups, cool downs, any advice needed, and just generally help out.
Yeah, cool. I bet that's really quite fulfilling when, do you see people sort of go from not being, kind of struggling with their fitness to then, maybe a year down the line, feeling really fit and, running their dog a lot better?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, again, I compare it to my other job. There's a lot more job satisfaction in this one.
Yes, definitely.
And the biggest differences for me are not always to the people who might be seen on the world stage, because I mean, obviously that's awesome. I mean, I love that as well. I'm not trying to make out like, I don't get something from that. Someone I was training this year, she won the EO Smalls competition, and
oh wow,
I was so pleased for her because of how hard she'd worked.
Yeah.
So it was cool that she was working with me, but like I know the sessions that I made her do.
Yeah.
And I know how difficult it was.
Yeah.
And
all paid off.
Exactly. So that was really good. But then equally, I've got people who are part of the academy who couldn't bend over to do their laces, and now they're able to run. And I get as much from that. You know, it's just really cool I think the bottom line is that there is always hard work involved.
Yes,
right?
Absolutely.
And ultimately, if people want to make these physical improvements, there is no pill that you can take that will just make you fit. You have to put work in.
Definitely.
So it's seeing the people who like perhaps never did fitness before, realizing how hard it is, but then stick at it until they reach their goals or until they see some real progress. And then you can almost see that moment that like a switch goes off and they're like, oh my God, this is working.
Yeah.
And that in itself is as much motivation as I could ever give them.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's really cool to see that.
Yeah, because it takes a while, you know, like often people will like, say, go to the gym in January and like finish after 4 weeks and they're like, I haven't seen any changes. But it just takes such a long time, doesn't it?
That's it, yeah. And that's the biggest reason why people's programs ultimately fail is because people give up. Yeah. I know that sounds so obvious, but it is. It is the one thing that I bang on about all the time. And like people who work with me, people who are in the academy, I say this until I'm blue in the face. Consistency is everything.
Yeah.
It's no good being really keen for 4 weeks and doing 5 sessions a week for 4 weeks. Ultimately, you'll get fitter, but that's not the goal. The goal is, 2 sessions a week for 5 months.
Yes.
That's when you're going to see real change because you're not committing to a training course. You're committing to a lifestyle change.
Yes,
and
definitely.
I always say that, and this isn't my saying, but we've got one body. And essentially the fitness is like paying rent.
Yes.
You've got one car and you will service it, but you're even able to change your car, but yet you'll still take that to a service. Yet we have only got one body and people aren't willing to put time into it. So I'm just like, please, even if you can spare like an hour a week, 1 hour a week to giving yourself a service, if you want to put it like that.
Anything's better than nothing.
100%. Like people are like, oh, I've only got an hour a week. I'm like, well, great.
Do it, yeah.
That's an hour
Use
more
it.
than we're doing, isn't it?
Yeah,
So I don't think people need to be spending hours a week fitness-wise. I'm not saying people need to be 10 hours a week in a gym. Equally, if they can, then, they're going to get more benefits. But, to see drastic changes, like if you can give an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours a week.
Yeah, it all adds up.
100%. You'll see huge changes from that. And people who tell me that they can't, I always think that, I think maybe you can, but you prioritize other things.
Yes,
and that's fine as well. But I think it starts with being honest with yourself.
Yeah.
I'm guilty of it sometimes. I try my best not to, but like you'll catch yourself scrolling through Facebook,
TikTok,
or you might catch yourself just sitting down and chilling out. But nothing wrong with that either. But to tell you haven't got time is a little bit of a white lie to yourself.
Yes,
because you haven't got time, you just prioritize other things.
Yeah, 100%. So do you work with, would you say now within your business, you work more with people from agility or more with people from, just general sort of everyday people, or is it a mixture of both? It
used to be general people only, and then it went to a mixture of both. But now I would say 90% of the people who I work with are just agility people.
Oh, wow, okay.
Because I can make everything on the website kind of agility related. It just makes sense. I still have some people who I train because just ultimately they've always trained with me, and I won't kind of be like, oh, I'm not training you
don't
anymore.
Do agility.
But yeah, I would say the vast majority is a fair way of saying it. Vast majority now are people in or around agility.
Yeah. That's awesome. So why is handler fitness important in your opinion?
Specifically to agility or in general?
Yeah, agility handler, yeah.
Well, ultimately, it could really help you, but it'll never harm you.
Yes, yeah.
That's the thing I always say, because there's always the argument, oh, I don't need to be fit to do agility. Okay, if that's your opinion, that's okay. I disagree, but that's okay.
Yeah.
But my argument is being faster will never make you worse.
No, never.
Being fitter will never make you worse at agility. It'll only increase your chances. And realistically, I think if we want to be honest, it depends what level you want to do agility at as well.
Yes, definitely.
But if you're looking to do it at a high level and you want to compete internationally, the reality of the situations are that the courses are becoming a certain way.
Yeah.
There's a lot more extension on the courses and they're relentless, I think is a good way to explain it. There's a lot of sprinting. There's very minimal amount of recovery, and then you've got to sprint again and repeat 4 or 5 times. That's just the general way the trends of these courses are going. So if you tell me the fitness is not going to help you, I don't agree. Like I said, you can do without it. I suppose, but you then really need to make sure that your dog training is on point. Yes. And again, my point stands. It's not going to harm you.
Yeah,
exactly. It's always going to increase your chances. And I think that's what it's all about for me. Mm-hmm. And then even if you look at what I would call domestic or hobby level, fitness is never going to harm you. Yeah, it's always going to be something that's going to improve your experience in dog agility. But I actually have more value on how it will improve your everyday life.
Yes, definitely.
That's my biggest thing. That, again, it's one of the things that I say to everyone all the time. Great, if we can improve your performance in agility, awesome. And use that as your motivation. I got no issues there. But the benefits you'll feel in everyday life far outweigh the benefits that you get in agility, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's everything.
If agility is a hobby to you.
Yeah, definitely. And I suppose agility as a sport is just getting faster, I suppose, isn't it? And like you said, courses are getting, bigger, wider. So, yeah, unless you can, say a command from 5 meters away and your dog do it, then it's definitely helpful.
Exactly. And then that's what it comes down to. Yeah. It's only going to help.
100%. So this is more personal to you and your own fitness, but what is your weekly workout split, so your workout routine, and what type of fitness training do you recommend for agility handlers? So that's kind of 2 in 1.
Ooh, it's a big question.
Very big question.
So my training varies a lot. A lot of the time now how I train the people in the academy is essentially what my training program is. Because I do genuinely believe that what I am training everyone works, because it's literally my training program.
Yeah.
I just try to break it down. Yeah, I just try to break it down and make it applicable so that anyone can do it. So whereas maybe I'd say do some back squats, we'll do some goblet squats. Maybe we'll do some body weight squats.
Yeah.
Essentially, every movement pattern has got a progression or a regression. And as long as you're physically able to partake in exercise, there'll always be something you can do. And that's what I try to do in the academy sessions is I can make the session a certain way that doesn't matter your fitness level, whether you are super fit or whether you are just coming into fitness, you'll still be able to do the session and it will still be a good session for you.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm currently doing a few extra sessions as well, because at the start of every year, we call it the Karma Kickstart group, which is kind of like clean the diet up for 3 months, try to do some weights that are more for aesthetics rather than for performance.
Yeah.
So I'm doing what I call beach weights a little bit now, which is something that I don't do anymore. And for that, I do kind of a push-pull legs split.
Yep.
But the academy sessions is what's called, I would consider a GPP, which is a general physical preparedness program.
Okay.
And it's just a program that consists of strength training, conditioning, flexibility, mobility, core, injury prevention, all of the attributes I think are important to make a well-balanced athlete and someone who can compete in agility at a good level, let's should we say.
Yes, I think people sort of think of, core stability, mobility, flexibility, and don't think of it as almost part of it. They kind of just think, straight to the weights or the run or whatever, and then get injured and wonder why, but they haven't done.
Right?
Or vice versa, definitely.
Because I always say to people, the thing that you should be doing is probably the thing that you want to do least.
Yeah.
So what you'll often find, right, and I was definitely guilty of this in the past, is I always wanted to do weights.
Yes.
And the reason that I always wanted to do weights is because I was quite good at weights. Okay, and that's the reason that when you go to the gym, you often see lots of big dudes or big or strong-looking women, strong-looking men, fit-looking people, because they go there because they know that's what they're good at.
Yeah.
And oppositely, that's exactly what you find in a yoga studio. You'll go in there and you'll find people who are super limber, really flexible, got insane mobility. And the reason they go there is because that's what they're genetically disposed to being good at.
Definitely.
As humans, we kind of tend to go towards the things that we are successful at, or the things that we're good at. And it's kind of almost like you need to say, right, if you want to do stretching, you're probably the person that needs to do some strength work.
Yeah.
And then vice versa. If you're looking to do strength work, there's every chance that you probably need to do more stretching.
Yes,
definitely. To kind of balance things out, right?
Yeah, that's probably again why you see most like women, and I don't know if this is sexist, but like you see women do like legs and glutes a lot, don't you? And never any chest. And then you see men just doing like upper body and stuff like that at the gym. Like the amount of conversations
about it, not me.
It had to be said because I swear it's such a stereotype.
Well, I would say that in my academy clients, probably about 85% are female.
Okay.
And I am big on press-ups, and it's not because of developing chest. Obviously, it does help that as well.
Yeah.
But a press-up is essentially a moving plank. That's how I describe it. Okay, you have to maintain a plank position, and then you add movement. So it's a progression to a plank.
Yeah.
So get into the science side of things a little bit, so you can get my understanding. The reason that we train a plank is to train our body to be resistant to the movement that would take our spine. Again, without getting too technical, forward and back, right?
Yeah.
So you need to be able to resist that movement of going forward and back. And that's useful for sprinting so that we can have a stable midline to produce power from and project it in the direction we're looking to go. So a progression from a static plank is a press up, right? Because we're adding a little bit of movement, but not as much movement as running.
Yeah, same position, now,
Exactly, yeah. So with women, like you just said, for the most part, they will avoid any exercises in general life and when they go to the gym that involve the chest.
Yeah.
Because aesthetically, that is not something that they're looking to work on, shall we say.
Yeah, that's it. Aesthetics, isn't it? People go for, I think, more than performance often at the gym. Yeah.
Exactly. But there is a performance benefit from it, and that's my point. So when women come in, and I say generally because it's not always the case, but often when women come in and they say, I just can't do press-ups, and I'm like, yeah, but that makes sense because you never have.
Yeah.
So it's going to take you longer to do something that you just never would have done. Where a man might come to me and like he can just do 20 press-ups because through his life he will have wanted to train chest at points, so his chest will have been trained.
Yeah.
But then I put him on a squat machine or on a squat rack and he can't squat for toffees. Because, like, again, it's not something he's ever tried to do. Yeah, a woman would go to the gym and she would choose to squat. And you definitely get those generalizations.
Yeah,
and they are generalizations because there are always exceptions to the rules, should we say? But I would say that is fairly accurate. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's not just that it's men versus women; it's just what people do, isn't it? Like if men decided to train legs their whole life, they'd be really good at legs too. Like. It doesn't really...
Yeah, again, like I said, there are always exceptions to the rules. I know plenty of females who can do press-ups and they can do them really, really well. And I know men who can squat and they can squat really, really well. But we're talking a generalization, and I would say that definitely stands.
Yeah, definitely. So we were talking about weights, but would you say strength training or cardio? So which is more important for agility handlers, in your opinion?
Oh, see, so cardio to me is quite vague.
Yeah.
And again, I don't know how deep into the science you want to go of it, but there's different energy systems, and they would probably all come under cardio.
Okay.
So for me, strength training, I don't know how deep you want me to go into this, but with agility, then when we're doing agility, unless it goes really, really wrong, we're most likely to be in the ring for about 50 seconds.
Yeah.
There or thereabouts. Right? If it goes really wrong, maybe up to 2 minutes, I suppose. But, let's hope one's in there for 2 minutes.
That's a long time.
So at that point, you can kind of argue, is it an aerobic exercise or could it be anaerobic if it goes really, really well? And again, it does depend on course design and that type of stuff.
Yeah.
So yes, it's important to do your aerobic exercise, but I would make sure that you're hitting an energy system where you're making it more glycolytic, more anaerobic, your ability to work at a higher intensity. And I would say that strength training compared to aerobic is more important, in my opinion, because so with strength training, the number one thing that I think is important is it increases your resilience to injury.
Yes, definitely.
You're less likely to get injured if you do a good strength training program. I'm not just saying go in the gym, throw some weights around, and you'll be bulletproof. But if you have a considered exercise program, you definitely will become more resistant to injuries because your muscles will be able to take more strain, and that in itself is something that's going to help.
Definitely.
But with strength training, what you do is you increase your potential. I think that's the best way of putting it, because if you're stronger, you've got more potential to be more powerful. And if you can be more powerful, then you've got more potential to be fast.
Yes, definitely.
And obviously there's a lot more that goes into it. But again, from a broad point of view, that's how I look at it.
Yeah. And I suppose if you've got like well-developed leg muscles, you know, you'll be able to push off faster and stuff like that as well. So it does definitely come into it. But like
strength is your ability to move a heavy object, right, from A to B. And then power is how fast can you move that object.
Yeah.
Well, if you've got more strength, then you've got the ability to have more power.
Yeah.
And it takes training in those specific things. But yeah, exactly that. If you are stronger, then you could potentially increase your speed more, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I suppose with cardio, like you said, it's very broad. Like I don't know tons about it, but you've got is it low intensity, steady state cardio? So that's your like light jogs and walks and stuff.
Yeah. And so that would be what I would consider aerobic.
Yeah.
Where you're using oxygen as your energy source. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the other one, what's the other one? high intensity state. I can't remember what it's called.
Yeah, so you've basically got three energy systems. You've got one which is called your ATP-PC, which is adenosine triphosphate and phosphocreatine, and that is the like explosive type one-off efforts. So like a 10-meter sprint, it's like an all-out blast, as fast as you can go, right? Yep. And then the next would be considered anaerobic or glycolytic. And this is where you aren't using oxygen, but you've gone for too long for your ATP-PC system. And there's never it's never, I'm in one, and then, right, I'm stopping that one now, I'm into the next one. There's always like a period of changeover, I guess, like a change of shift, if you want to call it that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And then after that, then you've got your aerobic or your oxidative, which is what you're saying there, low intensity, steady state stuff.
Yeah. So I suppose if you've got a really fast dog on a steeplechase course and it lasts like 20 seconds, that's probably anaerobic.
It's definitely anaerobic, as long as you're not just standing and pointing. Yeah, you'd be, anaerobic.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. So I think this is probably one of the most important ones as far as people actually sticking to their fitness. So how do you stay motivated to stick with your program? And I had a few people ask that same question.
Yeah, it's big. But you know, I mean, like I said, I've been doing this for a long time, and it's definitely. God, I wish I could invent like a drink or something that people could take, and then they become motivated.
Yeah, it's hard, isn't it?
Yeah, it would be. I'd be rich, man. I'd be so rich. I think that's what I got to work on. So there's a couple of things to this. I think there are definitely ways that you can help. One thing that I always tell people to do is get a kind of accountability group. So I'll give you an example of within the academy. In the academy, I tell people to buddy up. So make groups of like 4 or 5 of them who know each other. And then every time there's a session, once they've done it, they get underneath the session and they tag all the people in the accountability group to kind of call them up on it and be like, you know, have you done it? I've just done it. So it's your turn to do it. And I think that definitely helps. Another thing, there's all things in the background at the minute, but so I've got an app being developed where you can have, you know, you can earn rewards for being consistent.
Oh, like a streak.
So that's something that can work for some people. I think that's quite useful. I think ultimately the way that people need to approach it needs to be, so I don't know how, so the way I say it to people is it should always be something that you don't see as an option. So like brushing your teeth. Yeah. And again, it's the same analogy I use all the time because I think it's the best one. You know, sometimes brushing your teeth isn't exactly
fun.
It's not fun. No. You don't really want to do it. It can be a pain in the bum if you really want to be doing something else, but you just do it because you should do it.
Yeah.
And ultimately that's what I feel like fitness training should be.
Part of your routine
because it's
as well.
The same reason. It's for your health and for your fitness, right?
Yeah.
And again, the word motivation riles me a bit because I just don't think is actually something that people should be striving for.
No.
Yeah, and equal because of that reason, right? Motivation is fleeting.
Yeah.
And it's externally influenced. You could listen to a song and be motivated. And it's great if you've got it. I'm never against motivation, but the issue I have is that it's not internal. What I think you should try to find is a drive. And I always tell people, find your why. Yeah. Why are you doing this? It needs to be more than motivation, because with motivation, say you're due to go and do a running session and you're motivated and you're like, yeah, I'm motivated to do this. I just listened to the Rocky soundtrack. I'm good to go. And you open the door and it's hammering down with rain and it's like blowing a gale. And
then
you think,
you've lost it.
Yeah, I'm not motivated anymore. I'm kind of, I'm good. I'm going to stay on the couch.
It's discipline, isn't it? Discipline over motivation, isn't it?
Exactly. It's the discipline, it's the drive. If you've got a why, then it doesn't matter if it's raining, you're still going to get out there and do it because you know you need to reach your goal.
And then you feel so good once you've done it, so it's worth it.
100%. You never regret a session.
Exactly. And I think something that has helped me, because I've been, I do a little bit of I do fitness every day. I go to the gym pretty much 6 days a week, only for 45 minutes or whatever, and do weights. But what's helped is sort of creating a routine. Like, I'm quite a routine person, so it's just part of my sort of morning routine that takes me up to lunchtime, if that makes sense. Like, it's just part of it. Like, I'm at the point where it'd feel weird not to do it now. So do you know what I mean? You kind of don't even think about doing it because you just do it. So
you've made that like a habit, like brushing your teeth, haven't you?
Yeah, that's it. That's definitely important. So this is sort of going on to the nutrition side of fitness, because obviously they come hand in hand, I suppose. But are you quite strict with your nutrition, as far as following macros, calories, stuff like that? And how important do you believe nutrition is in fitness?
Again, it depends what level we're talking at, right? So firstly, I'll answer for what I'm currently for myself with my fitness. I'm a realist. Okay, I do not want to spend a life of being super strict. To me, I'm not getting enough enjoyment out of life if I was only eating the super strict healthy diet. Healthy, because for me, enjoyment is healthy. Right? Yeah. So I use what I would call kind of a 75-25 strategy, where 75% of the time I'm eating good, whole foods. I'm getting the vitamins, the minerals, the proteins. I'm getting calories to support my training. But then 25% of the time I'll have a piece of cake.
Oh, yeah. Definitely.
Or I'll have a glass of gin, or I'll have a pint of beer, or whatever the case may be, because I always say that you should never be that person that turns down a piece of cake.
No.
Because you are weird if you do that. Yeah. And no one wants to be that guy, You want to go out with your friends and have a meal, enjoy the meal. Just, don't have a meal out every night of the week. And
don't want to be bringing a Tupperware. I think that's what that comes
down to with regards to everyday stuff.
Yeah.
I think it's important to, I'm not saying eat like a moron. Don't eat like a kid and just eat all the sweets all the time, but don't stop yourself from having something you enjoy as well,
Yeah, definitely.
When it comes to competition, it does depend on the level that we're talking. But ultimately, if you're talking at the very top level, then it makes a difference. I mean, you are that old cliche of you are what you eat. And it is, right? It's the energy, the fuel source that goes into you. And people are like, oh, I don't need to eat well. I do well off like chips. That's great. But how well could you be doing? And that's that's where I'd go with it. I mean, you might, myself, for example, I'll have people who say to me, how well do you eat on a competition day? And it generally depends. If I'm out camping and it's just a normal show, I'll take what I can get. I'll have a good breakfast. But then if it's a champ day, for example, and I don't like to eat too much because I don't like to compete on like a really heavy stomach. So I might just have a kind of like a tray of chips at lunchtime just to cover me over until if I'm in the champ final. And then in the evening, then I'll have a really good meal and make sure that I kind of, again, have enough calories to support the work that I've done.
Yeah, definitely.
But if I was in something a little bit more serious, if I was in, when we've got crufts coming up, I will make sure that my eating is good for that kind of thing.
Yeah, I suppose it's finding the balance between, isn't it, as well, with everything, fitness and nutrition, I suppose.
It is. You can take it to the extreme if you want, but I just don't think that's sustainable always.
No.
But when you're talking about extraordinary circumstances, like a Crufts, like an Olympia, like a World, all that kind of stuff, then I think you should try, you've probably gone through a lot of effort to get to these places, so you should probably try and just tick all the boxes,
Yeah. I mean, there's too many cake stands and stuff at shows for me not to have a cake while I'm at a show, to be honest. They're just everywhere, aren't they?
Oh, you try to stop me. I'm first in the queue.
Yeah. So you kind of briefly touched on this next one earlier, as far as injuries go. But do you take any precautions to avoid injury? And if so, what are they? So you mentioned earlier about, strength training in general just sort of avoids injury without you even meaning to. But is there any, more specific things you do to avoid injury?
Well, I do think that I'm big on the strength training because I know how beneficial it can be. So I definitely think that's a massive one. Mm-hmm. The other things then that are important are the obvious things like a warm-up and a cool-down.
Yes.
It does make a difference from a performance point of view as well as an injury prevention point of view. Mm-hmm. But then the other things that make a big difference on injury, hydration, sleep quality.
Yes, definitely.
And when we're talking sleep quality, we're talking like your ability to recover. Mm-hmm. And if... Again, we're talking about bottling something again or making it into a pill. But if I could make sleep into a pill, it would be the most potent performance-enhancing drug in the world. Because it's the thing that probably most people don't get enough of.
Yeah,
and you don't actually realise how big of an effect it'll have.
Yeah, especially the night before a show.
Huge. Getting up so honestly, early. You see the research and the studies and they show like all of the physical... how detrimental 1 hour less sleep is.
Yeah.
And then you look at like how much worse quality it becomes if you have a drink and then if you're sleeping somewhere new, and it's mad. Honestly, it's crazy.
Which isn't ideal for agility because, we're getting up at 5 a.m. to travel and then, we're often sleeping in hotels or tents or caravans or something. So that is quite difficult.
This is massive. You're right. You're 100% right. And this is one of the things I help the Team GB with as well, is there are ways to kind of trick your body into thinking that it is your home environment so that sleep is improved. Mm-hmm. It's a massive thing because everyone laughs at me because I take my own pillows with me everywhere.
That's a good idea.
It's honestly, it sounds ridiculous, but I'm telling you, it's a game changer. It makes it feel more like home, so your body relaxes a little bit more.
Yeah, definitely.
Again, going into the geeky side of things because that's what I enjoy. Mm-hmm. It's kind of a remnant from an evolutionary standpoint, mm-hmm. where if we are sleeping somewhere that's not familiar, we almost don't go into as deep a level of sleep, so that because we need to be more alert because we don't feel safe. And even though that's not really the case anymore because you can lock your door, it still stands. If you're not in a place that is familiar and comfortable, we don't sleep as well because, again, evolutionarily, is that a word?
I know what you mean.
It is now. We're kind of prone to being more aware on somewhere that isn't familiar.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's really interesting. And I suppose the nutrition also could play a role. If you're not getting enough, protein and stuff like that, then you're probably more likely to get injured, are you? Stuff like that with nutrition?
I don't know if it would be... I mean, protein is important. I'm definitely not discounting that fact. Again, that's something I'm always big on. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it's so much... It definitely would play a part into injury, thinking about it for sure. But I think getting enough calories in is important. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying to people to massively go over your calories, but equally, if you are competing, you need to be at least at maintenance, because no one wants to be in a calorie deficit when you're trying to perform.
No. And with the sleep, back to the sleep, it's not just time in bed, is it? Because it's sort of what is it, REM sleep, you need to be in a deep state of sleep. So 5 hours of REM sleep would be better than, say, 9 hours of light sleep or something like that.
Well, to a point, there's 4 stages of sleep, and all of them are important. But that's the thing. All of them are important.
Yeah,
and sometimes people don't get into the later stages. So then they don't get the benefits of those later stages, which are the deeper sleep is where you get like the hormonal rebalancing and the real recovery type stuff.
Yeah.
All of them are important. You couldn't do without any of them. But what happens when people go through the cycles is they maybe won't get into the last one for very long, and then they end up going back to stage one. And I mean, I'm no sleep expert. I've got a very basic understanding, but yeah, that's what happens is they don't really get the benefits of all of the phases.
Yeah. So for sort of warming up and cooling down then, how do you have a routine for warming up and cooling down? You know, obviously you warm the dog up and cool the dog down, but for yourself, is there anything you do specifically, and, you know, kind of how long do you do that for?
Yeah, I have got my own warmer. Usually I spend about 10 minutes, maybe a little bit more, possibly more depending on how I'm feeling personally as well. But I think the one thing that is important with a warm-up is no one's, like, I could give a general warm-up, okay?
Yeah.
And like, it would do a good job generally. But equally, everyone might need something a little bit different because, I mean, myself, I've got really tight... I'm going to say something that could have been taken the wrong way then. I've got hips that are inflexible in certain movements.
Okay.
So I have to spend a little bit extra time on that. And that's what I mean. Everyone will have some kind of deficiency that maybe they need to focus on a little bit more. And equally, I like to get to the start line and have like worked up a sweat almost. Like, have you heard of the saying, like, I've got my second wind?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
It's a weird one for me, but because I've always done, like, longer endurance-based sports, I like to have got my second wind before I'm starting, if that makes sense.
I often find that warming up kind of gets you in the zone mentally as well as just physically. Do you know what I mean? If you spend, like, 10 minutes before you run getting ready for the run, you're going to be more focused than if you just gone into it from like sitting down and thinking about something else, I suppose. So
100%. It's part of the process, isn't it? It's like you say, whenever you're doing something with your dog, you kind of try to get a routine on it so that your dog is used to it and feels comfortable. And I think that's the point of it with the warm-up is part of the ritual almost. People always say, I can't do a warm-up because I need to be thinking about what I'm doing. But my thing is always, but if you do the warm-up enough, you don't need to be thinking about the warm-up, and you can use that to think about what you're doing.
Exactly.
Like, I've done my warm-up so many times, it's autonomous. I don't need to think about what I'm doing. I'm just going through the stages of it. And whilst I'm going through the stages, I'm thinking, right, number one, I'm going to front cross, I'm going to be on the far wing, and then I'm going to... Do you know what I mean? You can be doing that in the warm-up.
I mean, I don't really see any, you know, I don't see a lot. I think usually I see people like competing in champ and stuff warming up, but at general shows, I really don't see a lot of people warming up at all or cooling down. You know, I'm there ringside, like swinging my legs around, and people are like, what are you doing? But no one else seems, you know, and people put so much into their dogs, like in general, you know, physio,
don't get me started.
Physio joint supplements, like the raw food and stuff like that. And they're nothing on themselves.
Honestly, I could go into this so much. It's such an annoyance of mine where people are like, oh, I honestly don't even know where to start. I remember the first show that I ever went to and I was warming up and like someone literally said to me, are you warming up? I was like, are you not warming up? I was like that was mental to me, not warming up. But I mean, it's kind of changing people's mindset, I guess. And like what you just said then about the raw food. Again, perfect example, right? People are like, oh God, I'm not giving processed food to my dog, as they're like snacking on biscuits and all this kind of stuff.
Exactly.
And it's like, people make things so much more complicated than it needs to be. And I think the nutritional side of the thing is by far one of the most. Like I have people who are on like the nutritional groups, and like some will be wanting to lose weight, some will be wanting to gain weight, and they start talking about macros and ratios and nutrient timing and insulin resistance and all this kind of thing. And I'm like, you know, these things are relevant, but we've got to look at like look at what's important first. I was like, where are your calories at? I was like, let's look at this in a more simple way. Your dog is overweight. What do you do? And they say, oh, well, I just reduce its food and make it move more. And I'm like,
do it.
Exactly. Exactly that. Why are you don't worry about nutrient timing. You don't worry about the macros he's eating.
No,
you just feed him less. and make him move more. Yeah, for you're talking about all of these things that are really insignificant in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, it's quite a simple principle,
level bodybuilder, they need to worry about those things.
Yeah.
But you don't. Just have an apple instead of a Jaffa cake and go for a walk.
Exactly.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's it. But I mean, I had a PT for a small amount of time, about maybe 2 years ago. Just because I didn't really know what I was doing. Obviously, my goal was never to stay with him forever. But also back to the accountability, that helps. If you have a coach, you're accountable to that coach. Do you know what I mean? And if you're going into the gym and your coach is there doing your session, you have to do it because he's right there. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
That really
it does help for sure. I mean, that is definitely one of the reasons why a lot of people go to a PT. And I do try my best to kind of emulate that as much as I can online.
Yeah.
I'll check in with people. I'm always commenting. I'm always posting. And I do as much as I can. But, you've got to be realistic as well. The reason that I'm able to offer as much as there is on the website for as little a price is because it's not in person.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, that's true.
That is the drawback. And I'm always very honest with people about that. I mean, I can chase you as much as you want. I'm never actually going to be there in person. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. But while I was with this PT, he got me to track my calories and macros and stuff like that, make sure I was getting enough protein, blah, blah. And I did for a while, but I just couldn't keep it up. It was a nightmare, having to do it for literally every single thing. It's so time consuming. So again, it's not, a very sustainable thing. But at the same time, it kind of taught me more about the types of food. So I can sort of eyeball it. I know roughly what's in this food and what's in that. So, again, I think it's better as sort of a short-term thing. But no, it was a nightmare doing it every day for months and months.
You just hit the nail on the head there for me. I mean, for me, it's a tool, right?
Yes,
and if I say to people to track their calories, it's a tool.
Yeah.
It's one of those things, like you said, that gives people a real insight into how essentially energy balance is what it comes down to, how it works, and then more so how the foods they are eating affect them. So there's often things that come up and people are like, oh my God, I didn't realize that had so many calories. And that kind of thing is really useful for, but I always think of it as like a tracing paper. So when you're learning, you use the tracing paper lots because you're learning how to draw. When you're learning how to manage your energy balance, you use calorie counting a lot because you're learning how to do it.
Yeah, that's a good
Once you get better, take the tracing paper away. Because like you said, you've got a fairly good idea how it works. And then if you ever need to, bring it back.
Yeah.
And it's like, so you think to yourself, oh, I really want to make a push for 8 weeks to drop a few pounds. Then you've always got that tool to bring in. It's like a running contact mat.
Yes, that's it,
you
exactly.
Bring it back in and you don't need to have it forever. But equally, once you understand how to use it, you can always use it.
Yeah, no, exactly. So again, this one's a little bit about injury in a sense, but do you taper during the lead up to important events? And how important do you believe tapering is? So this is something I came across when I was on the junior GB team. We sort of got taught about tapering. We didn't have to do it, but they sort of taught us what it is, how you can do it, why you could do it. Is that something that you do for yourself more than the dog even?
Oh, for the dog, definitely.
Yeah.
Probably the dog more so, to be honest.
Yeah.
So tapering is important. But for someone who isn't training regularly, it's not that important. Because you're not tapering from anything. So ultimately, tapering is more important for someone who's got a structured program.
Yes.
Tapering should be built in.
Yeah.
So I'll talk about my clients who are on an individual programming type level. What I speak to them about is where their priorities lie. And say their priority lies in May. So we program up to May. And then in that program, the tapering is in place.
Yes.
Now, all tapering is, from a very basic point of view, is a decrease in volume, in load, and in general, strain, if you want to call it that, how hard you're working. And it's a general decrease so that when you get to the competition, you are able to make the most of all of your gains that you just made from the program because you're not feeling tired from it.
Yes.
Now, constantly when you're in any program, so like if you think of it as a moving scale of time, and on any given day, your level might be up here, and you do an injury, you do a session and you get tired, so like your strain brings you down.
Yeah.
Well, then throughout the next day, you're coming back up, and then you improve, and then you're a little bit stronger than you were the day before, right? That's how training works.
Yeah.
Your body adapts to make you stronger, fitter, faster, whatever it is you're training for. Well, if you're constantly training really hard and you never get into the point where you were improving, you're going to go on a general downward spiral.
Yes, yeah.
So ultimately, what you need to do is get the program so that you're doing enough intensity to force the adaptation with enough recovery to allow the super compensation.
Yes, yeah.
And then as you're coming to your event, taper off so that you're getting the benefits from all of the gains. I hate that word, but it's the best word for this situation.
I know what you mean. I suppose, you kind of do that day to day anyway, but like small scale tapering. So that's why you don't train, say, legs one day and then legs the next day, to allow them to...
So this is what I was going to say to you then as well, is like, even if you've got an ultimate goal as being, for example, the EOs, throughout that program, you might have multiple weekends where there are events that you could do with feeling good for.
Yeah.
Well, you can't taper every week for them, but what you can do is stop training hard from the Wednesday.
Yeah.
So maybe have your Tuesdays your last hard session, Wednesday is like an active recovery, Thursday stretching, Friday off.
Yeah.
And then you go into that weekend fairly fresh. You shouldn't feel too heavy-legged. But yeah, you don't taper for every weekend.
No, yeah. I think one of the worst things I did...
I don't anyway.
Yeah, one of the worst things I did recently, it was only a small show, luckily, but I did a leg session on a Friday and then was like, oh, I've got a show tomorrow. And then I went to the show and I had the worst DOMs in my hamstrings ever, and it was just horrible. It was awful trying to run with it. I just was not as fast.
Harder, that's for sure.
Yeah, so that was definitely not my brightest idea. I didn't do that again.
I've got some funny stories about that, and I won't share them because they're not about me, but there's some great stories where people have misunderstood the session plans and ended up at a show looking like they've been riding a cowboy for 4 weeks.
Yeah, that's what I felt like I was at that show. I mean, I'm glad I learned it at a small show and not like Crufts or something.
Yeah, and like from a professional point of view, obviously not ideal.
No,
but I can honestly say it wasn't my fault. So yeah, I know they won't do it again, which is the good thing. But
you can't not learn from that.
Sure.
Yeah, but I suppose on the other end of the spectrum, if you take it too far and taper for like a month and do nothing for a month leading up to an event, you're going to get to the event and then be like stiff and out of breath. So it's like again a balance, isn't it? Like everything.
Yeah, it's the same for overtraining. When people say, "Oh, am I at risk of overtraining?" I'm like, "No, you're fine. An hour a day, every day of the week, you are fine.
Yes.
As long as you're kind of being sensible and not doing stupid stuff for the hour a day. I mean, there are people training a lot harder.
Yes, definitely. I mean, some people are in there for like 2 hours, 3 hours in the gym, and I'm like, I'm tired after an hour. I'm tired.
Yeah, I mean, I always think to myself that there is a point of limited return on that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it could go both ways. But it's like when people say to me, "Should I carb load?" I'm like, "We're not doing the Tour de France here, afternoon. We're kind of we're doing like 3 or 4 runs that are, medium to high intensity.
Yeah.
But if you want to eat pasta, just eat pasta. Don't look for a reason.
They're looking for an excuse to eat,
Exactly.
So the next one is, this is completely different topic. Again, I had a few people ask this. A few people that sort of listen and have listened to me talk about fitness with, who do agility but like didn't even think about fitness as, a part of it. And they said, how should newcomers deal with the social pressures of a gym environment?
Oh, this is massive. This is a massive issue. Again, there's a few different ways. I always think, and again, I know this isn't going to be an answer for some people because you're kind of just ignoring the point.
Yeah.
But I actually think like class environments are less, I don't want to say stressful, less intimidating maybe. Because with a class environment, you could maybe turn up with someone. And every class that I've ever taken or gone to, I've always felt has quite a welcoming, a more welcoming environment than perhaps if you have to just walk into a gym.
Yeah, definitely.
I would always say that you should try, if you can, to go with someone who has a bit of experience first.
Yeah, definitely.
Just so that you can kind of, have a look at all the machines with them. They can kind of give you a quick tour around.
Yeah.
If you are talking about the gym in general, then you'd like to think that the people working at the gym will be, fairly inviting.
Yeah.
I know that I can only talk about where I've worked in the past, but like we've always made a point of being like, if someone's in the gym and looking like they're lost, you make a point of going to speak to them, because it is the hardest thing for people to get over. I'm acutely aware of it, which is why, for example, one of the reasons why I do some of the stuff I do in the academy, I do what is called an on-ramp group. And what that is just like a 2-week period where I explain how the sessions work. I explain how the groups work. I explain all the sessions. I explain how to fight. The 2 weeks are hopefully enough to make you feel like you're going into it and you're not a beginner anymore, because you understand how things work. And some gyms do those as well. They do on-ramp processes. That's what I got the idea for the online on-ramp.
Yeah.
But it's the same thing. It's just to make people feel comfortable, so that when they become gym members or academy members for real, they don't feel like a beginner anymore, because they've had a 2-week induction session.
Yeah. Well, the gym I go to, they give you a free day pass, so you could literally be in there all day if you want before you join. So you can go in, they kind of show you around, and you get a trainer to go around with you and show you everything. And then you can just then the trainer goes off and you go off by yourself, and you can be in there for as long as you want without paying anything. And then you come back, you pay it, you come back, and then you know where all the machines are. Hopefully you have a program that helped me as well, knowing what exercise I was going to do for how long and stuff before I went in, so I don't feel like I'm just stood around wondering what I'm doing. So going in with a plan is definitely
100%. Like, again, it's one of the things that happens on the on-ramp program is I speak to everyone and I ask them what are their goals, and then from the back and forth between that, I give them a plan.
Yeah,
it's for the same reason as you just said. When you go to a gym, the best thing is if you're going in and you know what to do. It's not just turn up and be like, I'm going to go on that machine, or I'm going to go over there and do something. It's like, and it's the same thing when you're online. It can become overwhelming because there's so much stuff. But if you have a very clear plan, it's like, okay, I don't need to worry about anything else. I just go in and I do that, bosh, and it's done. It's far less intimidating if you have an exact idea of what you're doing and you've got a video to follow along to. Do you know what I mean?
And obviously there's different peaks of peak times at the gym as well. So maybe a new person goes maybe when it's not rammed. I usually go at 9:30 in the morning, and there's usually just old people there, so that's not too bad. But then I had to go at 5 p.m. once, and every machine was taken by men in their 20s.
I can't handle that. I can't handle that at all.
So maybe not going at 5 p.m. on your first gym session might be a good idea.
yeah, good idea. I didn't think of that one, but there's certainly peak times, that's for sure.
So I think that is quite an important one. But again, I think the more you go, again, it's kind of not really solving the issue. It's just forcing yourself to do it. And then after a few weeks even of doing it, or even days, you're kind of oh, yeah, it's easy now. Do you know what I mean? It's just
and there's a lot to be said about there's a lot to be said about putting yourself in uncomfortable situations. It definitely helps you grow.
You just get used to it.
You do. You do. You're right.
And then you also realise that, you kind of think, oh, everyone's watching me, but they're not. They're too focused on what they're doing. They don't even look.
Yeah, we're not as important as we think we are in general.
Yeah, no one's judging.
And the other thing that I always think as well, I mean, especially when I worked at gyms in the past, people are usually more than happy to tell you how to do stuff. They love to tell you.
Yeah.
They love to help, and it gives their ego a little stroke as well.
Yeah.
They can be like, exactly. Oh, I just helped someone today, and everyone's happy, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly. So, the next one is, I've lost where I was. There we go. So what is your advice for agility handlers who are new to and want to get into fitness? So this is just an agility handler who has never really considered fitness or done anything fitness-wise, but would like to get into it for their agility.
So if you're getting into it for your agility, then ultimately I think you need to find the type of fitness that's going to help you for your agility. But the thing I do always, I always like to say that the best type of fitness for anyone is the type you enjoy.
Yeah,
because
definitely.
That's going to be the type that you're going to be able to keep coming back to. So if it's brand new to someone, I think you should try to find something that you enjoy doing. And then if you enjoy doing that, then maybe you can start branching out and trying to find the stuff that you perhaps should be doing. to get better at agility, because it's not always the same thing. But equally, again, it's that something is always going to be better than nothing, right?
Yeah.
I can't think of many types of fitness that's going to harm your agility.
No, definitely not.
Yeah, so find what you enjoy. I would say is my number one bit of advice.
Definitely.
And then once you get into the world of fitness, or I mean, if you want to call it a world, I mean, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's when then you can decide if you want to kind of make more specific roads towards the type of fitness that you need to improve your agility.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, because if you go in doing something you don't like, again, you're not going to keep it up, are you, I suppose? So.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly that. Most people stop in a gym because they don't enjoy it.
Yeah.
And it's it's that thing of feeling like you don't really know what you're doing. That's not very enjoyable.
Yeah,
and that's a shame, because there are lots of different types of fitness, lots of different forms, lots of different ways that you can keep fit.
Yeah.
And ultimately, probably what they need is just a bit of direction, isn't it?
Yeah, just a bit of help. But again, back to the social pressures of the gym. Home, you do like home workouts. So doing workouts from home, obviously there's no pressure there because no one's watching you. So that's, I suppose, another thing that, new people could do, start at home where they're comfortable, doing stuff that they're comfortable with. I mean, I know you can like search up programs on YouTube and stuff, but I don't know how. I don't know whether, how good they are to actually follow. I don't know who uploads those, but, I suppose you can.
I mean, it's a bit of everything, right?
Yeah.
It's a bit of everything. I mean, I can't speak for all of the fitness programs out there for sure, but I mean, the one thing so there are a couple of things that I think are a strength of the academy. I mean, and I've said quite honestly, the weakness is that I'm not there in person to train you. So it's obviously, if that is your major stumbling block, then that will still be a stumbling block. And I can promise you, I regularly tell people this is not going to suit you, because the first thing they say to me is, I'm not very good at sticking to things online. Well, you're not all of a sudden going to be good, because this is what this is.
Yeah.
And as much as I will chase you up, and as much as I'll try and be motivational, it's an online training program.
Yeah.
So, that is something that's not going to change, but I'll do my best.
Yeah,
but
definitely.
The strengths of the academy are that you can do it in your home. So you are, for a lot of people, like you say, that feeling of feeling pressure, you don't get any of that because no one can see you. You're doing it on your own. You're doing it in your comfort of your own home. You can do it with no equipment. You can do it with minimal equipment, and you can do it whenever you want.
Yeah.
So there's no, you've got to be here at 5 o'clock. It's something that like, do you know what? I've got 40 minutes spare. I'll go and do a session now.
Yeah.
And they're always there. And I think that's, apart from the community, that I'm honestly is one of the proudest things of all of the things within the Karma Academy, the proudest thing is the community that we've got. Everyone is so helpful and motivational to everyone else. I think that's one of the massive strengths of it. If there's someone who needs help, there'll always be someone there answering the question before I can get to it. I can tell you that much now. And everyone's in agility, so everyone more or less kind of gets where people are coming from.
Relatable to each other, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly. And like I say, the fact that you can do it in your home, you know that the training is going to be suitable, because ultimately I've got all levels of ability in the academy, and every session is suitable to everyone because of the regressions. There's a bit more to it than that. But it's all learned on the on-ramp kind of thing. But it's suitable for everyone. It can be done from home, and 30 minutes a day. That's pretty much it.
And if there's another lockdown, you're sorted.
Yeah, exactly.
Because that's all anyone was doing, isn't it?
That helped a lot. I mean, I know it didn't help a lot of people, but that helped a lot. And I say 30 minutes a day. Some people do 30 minutes 3 times a week.
Yeah. Again,
you
back to the anything's better than nothing.
It's there for as much or as little as you want. And as you said, something is always better than nothing.
Yes, definitely. So what do you think if someone is, in a gym, or there's, personal trainers in their area or whatever, what traits do you think are sort of best to look for in PTs, and sort of what kind of what traits of like programs and fitness exercises is sort of a good thing to look for, or any red flags in that sort of area? Or
for sure. I mean, the one thing that everyone looks at, and the one thing that a lot of PTs think everyone looks at, is the qualifications. And now it's obviously important that you've got qualifications, okay? But ultimately, lots of people have got qualifications.
Yeah.
So what you need to look for, in my opinion, is someone who asks you, what are your goals?
Yeah.
Someone who asks you your questions. They don't just get you in and start slamming you in the gym.
Yeah.
Okay. A lot of PTs don't understand. I shouldn't say that. What you don't want is a PT who doesn't understand what you're trying to achieve, and they just think that you're looking to be slogged, essentially, whipped for an hour. And there'll be a lot of people who have a lack of understanding of how strength and conditioning works. And they think that getting someone sweaty and achy is a sign of a successful session, and it isn't. It's not always what people want. And don't get me wrong, there will be some people who do want that, and equally that's fine as well. But a good PT in my mind is someone who asks you, what are your goals? And then the big thing, I think, is when you are doing some of the exercises, they should always be able to justify why you're doing them. So everyone who I speak to or everyone who I coach, I always say to them, I'm like, look, if there's anything on here that you're like, why am I doing this? You should ask. And I'm not only talking about fitness training, I think dog agility training as well.
Yeah, definitely.
If you're being coached, the person coaching you should know why you're doing the thing you're doing.
Yeah, there should be a goal, a reason for it.
100%. Otherwise, why are you doing it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And, I mean, maybe it's just I've always been fortunate enough to be with people who are coaches and they aren't cheerleaders. And like equally, again, some people just want cheerleaders, and that's fine. But you should always be able to justify your opinions. There's one person who I coach, and she asks me nearly everything. Why are we doing this? And
fair enough.
I'm fine with it. I'm fine with it. I can't name any names, but she'll know who she is.
At least
I
it
honestly
shows
don't
she's
have
interested.
a problem with it.
Cool. So the last one, again, is, I don't know whether you actually want to go into detail of all of this now, but someone wanted to know your monthly costs, and do you offer a service that provides one-to-one communication with you? So maybe this is where you send someone to your website or something, but so that was a very specific question about your services in general. Yeah,
so I mean, the academy is what I would consider the group training now. And the thing with the academy is a set monthly fee of £35. But for £35, you get access to everything. So I've got courses on running, acceleration, changing direction. I've got strength courses. I've got flexibility courses. I've got mobility courses, core. And then I've got the academy, which is that ongoing course of every day there's a new session. So there's thousands of sessions on there. And you can pick which ones suit you for your needs. The good thing as well about the academy is if you are a paying member, then any course that I do choose to run in the future, you get a guaranteed space on it for no extra money.
Oh, okay.
So say, for example, recently now I've done a running course. So for people to join, it was £200. Okay. And it worked out at about £40 a month. For the people on the academy, they don't pay £40 extra on top. They get a place on the course, they guaranteed a space, and it's the money that they're already paying.
Oh, okay.
I like to reward the people who are loyal to me, and that's one of the ways I do it. If you are willing to pay and willing to support me, I will do all I can to support you. And it's, like I said, that £35 a month, it gets you access to everything, and you get communication with me. I'm not like there's no one else in Palmer Fitness. It is just me, I promise. I've got one person who does my admin for me, but anytime someone sends a message, I speak to people. And I can't say I'm going to give every single person feedback on every single exercise they do. If they say, could you just have a look at my squats or whatever, I'm never going to not answer those people. But then equally, if someone wants that level of feedback, the one-to-one, then I do individual programming as well. And then there is much more involvement with regards to how precise the programming is for that person's individual level and individual goals. But obviously, because of the extra input, that is more expensive.
So there you have it, guys. That was my conversation with Kurt from Karma Fitness. Thank you so much to Kurt for coming on to the podcast. That was a super interesting episode. I can talk about agility all day. I could talk about fitness all day. I could talk about nutrition all day. So that was absolutely perfect. Make sure you go give Kurt a follow on social media at The Karma Fitness. He is on all of them, I believe. And also follow me on all the socials. So I'll put them here on the screen on the YouTube video and in the description if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Speaking of Spotify and Apple Podcasts, if you could leave the podcast a 5-star rating or review, that would be amazing and mean the world to me. If you enjoyed the episode. If you didn't enjoy the episode, then please do tell me, leave a comment what you like and dislike about the podcast. It's super helpful for me. So yeah, that would be really appreciated by me if you could do that. And keep in touch. I am always active on social media every single day. And yeah, I will see you guys next Wednesday at 8 p.m. Bye!